This is Maurice Jones-Drew, and you're listening to the What's Bruin Show.
You're listening to the What's Bruin Show, part of the What's Bruin Show network, with your hosts, Jake Berryfield and Mike Regalado, and occasionally some friends, talking all things UCLA sports. And now, it's time for the What's Bruin Show.
Well, hello, welcome to What's Bruin. I am your host, Jake Berryfield. I'm coming to you the morning after. We saved it for the morning after. UCLA's big win over the Nebraska Cornhuskers at Nebraska, 27-20. UCLA comes in and pretty much dominates the game, a second game in a row, and manages to hold on late. And it is certainly, in my opinion, the best win of the Deshaun Foster era so far. But it's hopefully a sign of further development and things to come. But we're going to talk about today. It's the What's Bruin Show on the What's Bruin Show Network. Thank you very much for listening. You want to see us on the Twitter and on the Instagram, it's at What's Bruin Show. You can email us at whatsbruinshow@gmail.com. You'd subscribe on the Substack, whatsbruin.substack.com, or on the Patreon, patreon.com/whatsbruinshow, or just whatsbruinshow.com for a couple bucks a month. We appreciate your support. There'll be some extra shows coming your way in that feed, as well as the Slack channel. And you can search the show on YouTube. Just go on YouTube and search What's Bruin Show, and it's the Bruin stuff. Also, call the hotline. Got some calls today. Thank you very much. 805-399-4WBS, second rain in Troy. And, second rain in Troy indeed. The poor crew, the Rock crew, was up there in Washington watching that game live. And, Trojans come up short in the end. One of my buddies has a kid on the UW, and he sent me the last play live from the stadium. So that was lovely. But anywho, enough with that talk. I'm sorry I didn't bring this to you on Saturday afternoon, but Saturday turned into kind of a family day for me. My daughter came back from Santa Barbara, my middle daughter, and we ended up doing a bunch of errands and stuff. And I watched the game live, but it was kind of piecemeal, and I was listening to it on the radio, and then I was watching it on my phone, and then I was watching it on the TV, and then in the evening I cooked a big meal, and then we ended up watching a movie. So I didn't really have any natural time to sit down and do the podcast. And I wanted to have a little time for there to be a few calls to come through, and there are a few calls in there, so I appreciate that. But that's why you didn't get this last night or late last night or early this morning in your feed. But now it'll come out mid-morning on Sunday, I'm hoping, and hopefully there for you to enjoy, because it's certainly something that we should be able to bask and enjoy for the next few days, because, hey, the Bruins have now strung together a couple of nice games, some good play. And, but for the collapse against Minnesota, this would be a 3-game winning streak, right? And very well, should have been. But let's not dwell on what's negative. Let's talk about the positive, and that is UCLA coming out and taking a commanding lead in this game, 13-7, going into the half, and then scoring 14 more points, in the third quarter, and kind of coasting to the finish against a Nebraska team that could not score a point without being aided by a dumb play by a UCLA defender. I think the UCLA defense was the star of the show for most of this game, even though we had some big plays on offense. But also, I think you look at the glaring plays, the bad plays in this game. There were just a few of them, and a couple of them were kind of, shaky as far as like what the refs called. But still, those were costly plays that probably kept Nebraska in this game longer than they needed to be. And then Nebraska gets it together a little bit towards the end, and then UCLA knocks out their quarterback. So that was great as far as, obviously we feel bad for Dylan Raiola, but from the Bruins' point of view, if your defense goes out there and knocks quarterback out of the game, that is one of the objectives. So good job on the Bruin defense. Managed to get a ton of pressure throughout this game. Very stiff, despite some weird statistical anomalies that continue that we'll talk about a little bit later. But with that being said, let's get on to a recap of this wonderful Bruin victory.
I'm happy that UCLA won.
Fight! Go Bruins!
I like UCLA to win the game.
Okay, so to recap this game, UCLA comes out, opens the game as strong as they have all season long, and completely dominate the first quarter against the Cornhuskers. This is on the road, of course, and certainly I think the Cornhuskers are wondering what the hell happened after the first quarter. It's only 3-0, but early in the second quarter becomes 10-0, and that is an extension of what UCLA was doing at the end, through at the quarter break. But first quarter stats for you: UCLA 119 total yards, Nebraska 2. UCLA 1.5 drives. Nebraska, three total plays. UCLA ran 20 plays in that quarter, 3 plays and a punt for Nebraska. UCLA held the ball for 13.5 minutes to Nebraska's 1.5 minutes in that quarter, and they end up, like I said, scoring 3 punts. The Bruins are 4 for 5 on third down in that quarter, and Ethan Garbers is 9 for 10 for 83 yards. And once again, just a bunch of zeros on the Nebraska side because they only ran 3 total plays for a total of 2 yards. And looking at their approach to that first quarter, it really was them continuing to do the things that they have been able to do well this year. And, you threw out the first few games when they couldn't do anything right on offense. But they have been building on something the last few games, pretty much since the Penn State game where they reconfigured their attack. Instead of trying to push the ball deep a lot, instead of trying to, just do a bunch of middle screens and then check it deep and then, run the ball in the line of scrimmage. They have continued to attack, the short and intermediate part of the field and trying to push the edges and then get downfield after that. Once again in this game, Ethan Garbers, I think over 55% of his passes were 10 yards or shorter or behind the line of scrimmage. They didn't do I don't think they did any bubble screens in this game, like just pushing it behind the line of scrimmage out to the sidelines, which is something that I like to see. But look, it generally worked for the most part, and they were without some of their skill guys. Jamaal Sturtevant gets knocked out of the game, I think, midway through the game. Logan Loya got dinged up at some point. I haven't seen the injury report, really, the day after, but Eric Bieniemy is allowing Ethan Garbers to get rid of the ball quick, make quick decisions. If it's not there, he is running and being productive. This is exactly how we saw him be successful last year with Chip Kelly in games like the Stanford game, and it's been a good recipe. And Nebraska is not a terrible defense by any means. Are they the best defense in the Big Ten? Are they the best defense in the country? No, but they are a legitimate defense. And UCLA's attack, when they actually choose to utilize their weapons in a way that is productive for them, well, they're actually starting to get it done. Also, from a offensive line standpoint, from a pass protection standpoint, they have figured out a combination that works for them much better than it had been working in the previous few games. And you could say that Oregon and Penn State and LSU, the juggernauts they played early in Indiana as well, those are better defenses than what they're going to play left on the schedule, but the offensive line, regardless of the competition, is playing better. In this game, this is probably their best game as a unit as far as pass blocking goes. All of Garber's statistics and the offensive line statistics coming into this game were they were getting pressured about half the time. Nebraska didn't blitz a whole bunch in this game, honestly, but UCLA was able to keep, and this is going off of the PFF stats, which, take that with a grain of salt to a degree. But it's still, if you look at what they graded in game 2 versus what they graded in game 4 versus what they graded in this game, there is at least there's a consistency there. And by their eyes, and I think by our eyes too, just watching the game, it's clear, right? They kept Ethan Garbers clean a much higher percentage of the time. And like I said, earlier in the year, they were like 50% of the time Garbers was under pressure. This game, they have him only getting pressured about 29% of the time, which is that's going to get it done. That's going to allow him to do what he needs to do, which is, number one, by the way, him getting rid of the ball quick also helps that number, right? Because the ball's coming out. It's getting out, they're making plays, and they're getting down the field and then taking the plays in chunks when they need them. Not a lot of play action in this game, which I was hoping for more, but the couple of big plays they had were off of play action. They made it count. 5 for 5 on play action plays, 20 yards per attempt on play action plays, right? That's why even though they aren't the most effective running team, right, they had a couple of big runs in this game, but the biggest one was Garbers improvising. So, that doesn't count towards the quote-unquote running game, even though it counts statistically. But you have to keep running the guys into the line of scrimmage, even if they're only getting a yard or two or whatever, because that allows you to, if you're still moving the ball with the short passing game and whatnot, it allows you to take that play action and then make big plays down the field. And this game, they don't win this game without the 2 touchdowns, the 100 yards, and the 5 for 5 completions they get off of play action plays alone, right? That was absolutely huge. So getting back to the game recap, right? The first quarter, completely dominated. They take a 10-0 lead early in the second quarter, and they are running Nebraska, doing the things that they have learned how to do well this year after adjusting. And kudos to them. That was great. So we get to the second quarter.
Go Bruins!
And the defense, which really wasn't even on the field at all in the first half of this game, relatively speaking, And they literally forced a 3-and-out on Nebraska's second possession. It was going to be 3-and-out. Nebraska's punting from their own 25-yard line. And then my magic man, I love him. He was magical in this game for the most part.
The magic man.
Pulls a brain fart and kind of flexes towards the Nebraska sideline, gets flagged for an unsportsmanlike conduct. And I didn't think that. I thought 2 of the 3 unsportsmanlike conducts in this game were kind of hogwashy. However, I guess in Nebraska, what do we know about Nebraska fans? They're very polite folks. We waxed on. The game had a giant feature about the Nick Pizzuala game. Jim Mora tweeted about it this week. Everybody talks about how wonderful and gracious the Nebraska fans are. So I guess maybe the UCLA players shouldn't be flexing or even doing anything that would remotely be construed as a personal foul, because in Nebraska we're polite, right? Don't do that because you're going to get flagged. And in this game, it cost the Bruins. Arguably, it cost them 20 points because every single play that Nebraska scored on was immediately preceded by a personal foul that was a complete unforced error. So Oladejo, the Bruin defense, played amazing today. But when in Nebraska, hey, be on your best behavior.
Well, I'm sorry, all right.
But Nebraska gets some new life after that play. Oladejo gets the unsportsmanlike, and then Del Real immediately completes, 2 plays later, completes a 40-yard pass into Bruin territory, and then they kind of push it into the end zone a few plays later, and now it's 10-7, a much different game for the Bruins at this point to where it could have been, because, really, as hot as the UCLA defense looked, and they ended up scoring on the next drive, it could have been at least 13-0 as opposed to 13-7, or possibly even 17-0 based on momentum. But UCLA gets the ball back, and they do make a wonderful statement marching down the field midway through the second quarter. This is the drive where Ethan Garbers springs free and runs for 57 yards down the Nebraska, the middle of the field and cuts it outside, if I remember right. Does that cool little fake move where he doesn't quite slide, and I don't think it was anywhere near a slide call, don't get me wrong, but it was just a hesitation, and it shows that Ethan Garbers is a very dynamic dude when he's out there running, much more than what people give him credit for, I think. I'm hoping he doesn't ever take a massive, huge hit, because we don't want to get him hurt, but this is another game where he's made some of the biggest plays in the game, and he's the leading rusher for the Bruins, for the second week in a row. So, great job, Ethan, right? And he makes the big play. They get down the field. They end up stalling inside the Nebraska 10-yard line on a 4th and 1. Jalen Berger gets stuffed on 3rd and 1. And then there's a timeout, and Deshaun Foster, instead of going for it at this point, up 10-7 on Nebraska in the second quarter, he sends Pagani out there. Pagani kicks the field goal. All of a sudden, it's 13-7. And I know a lot of Bruin fans were very, very upset with that in the moment. And certainly I could see why you might not have liked that call. Okay. You do a quarterback sneak or whatever. But all I would like to say is, you look across college football today, look at the SC game. There were a number of plays that were very short plays that ended up getting stuffed, that ended up being kind of definitive in the game. Look, I can't tell you what Deshaun Foster's mindset is on this yet. It seemed like against them in the Minnesota game, he was ultra conservative, and then in the last game, he kind of lets it all hang out like we advocate for the players to do. And on this game, he kicks on 4th and inches inside the 10-yard line, and then later takes the delay game to punt almost in Nebraska territory in the second, early in the second half, and that is a very conservative mindset. So, I guess you could say right now, just, judging what he does, it seemed like to me the last game where he kind of went for it, and it actually paid off well. It seemed like that almost was a direct reaction to the criticism he had in the Minnesota game. But now against Nebraska, you'd have to say, going with your gut, that Deshaun Foster, as a young coach, is a conservative style coach. If you want to say it in a nice way, he is more conservative and does not want to take big chances and want to take the points when they're there, and that he's going with his gut depending on the situation of the game, certainly. And if you want to say it in a mean way, you'd say that as a first-year coach who's never been a coordinator, he is kind of afraid to go with what the new cutting-edge statistics tell you you should do, right? And that's up for you to decide. Something we did know coming into this year is that this is something that he's going to have to learn on the job, and I think this is we're seeing it live, him learning on the job what he wants to do and what his style is, and where he eventually ends up landing is one thing, but he's not there yet. right? So we're probably going to see these decisions be, from the outside looking at them, relatively erratic or not consistent for, maybe for the rest of the season, right? Maybe that's something that when he comes back in next season, that he has a more, defined plan in his mind. And right now he's just kind of like figuring out his style. I mean, I think that's something that's, even if it's not great to watch in the moment, it's kind of unavoidable, right? And I will say this, we're still, talking about the second quarter in the recap, but in the third quarter, that punt was much more defensible, in my opinion, than the 4th and 1 deep inside Bruin territory. But by the way, at the end of the day, he gets the 3 points. That 3 points end up being decisive in the end. That allows them to have a 7-point lead after the Nebraska missed kick, which is unpredictable. Like, there's a lot of luck involved in this, right? I think you still would have rather had those 4 points almost every single time. And given how short the distance was on that 4th and 1, I think most of us would like to see them seize that 4th and 1 and convert it and then get into the end zone, as opposed to giving Nebraska a little bit of a moral victory by getting a stop deep inside their territory, because that's really how that works emotionally for the players as well, right? You're kind of conceding something a little bit, even though you're getting the 3 points. Anyways, more about that in a minute. After that field goal, the second quarter ends with the Bruins and Cornhuskers kind of headbutting each other for the last half of the quarter, punting and punting and punting and punting, and then finally kneeling. It was absolutely dreadful. There was, I think, something like 30 total yards between the two teams after Nebraska gets the ball following the field goal with like 7 minutes left. So it's just dreadful. Punt, 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 and then end of half. And the Bruins go into the half up by a nice score of 13-7, and it feels like Nebraska had gotten something back by in my opinion, just like kind of the vibes of the game. Nebraska had gotten back into the game, certainly off of the personal foul, and then holding the Bruins to a field goal. I think that 17-7 feels a little better than 13-7, but whatever. At the end of the first half, the Bruins are still dominating on the statistical scoreboard too. They had 250-ish yards to Nebraska's 70. The Bruins have actually ran the ball a little bit. They almost got to 100 yards at 99. The Cornhuskers 24 passing yards. The Bruins have tripled them up, like almost 150. It's 149-47. And on third down, the Bruins are 6 for 10. Nebraska 1 for 5. And we're going to get to third downs later, but Nebraska's statistic turnaround in the second half was kind of bonkers when you look at it that way. And total plays, the Bruins ran 38 to Nebraska's 20. And the Bruins had the ball for 21 minutes almost to Nebraska's 9 and some change. Although in the second quarter, it was pretty much dead down the middle, like 7.5 for both teams. But the Bruins going to halftime, and the middle eight, as we call it, right, it was so far inconclusive, 0-0 in the last 4 minutes of the first half. And we'd have to see how the Bruins came out in the first 4 minutes of the second half. And turns out the Bruin defense comes out with their hair on fire. They get an interception for a touchdown. Kay Madrano makes a huge play, takes it down the sideline, hurdles, I think it's Raiola on that last hurdle, and gets into the end zone. Now the Bruins are up 20-7, firmly in control of the game after one play of the second half. And that was just absolutely brilliant. Go Bruins moment.
Go Bruins!
Go Bruins.
Go Bruins!
Go Bruins!
And then Nebraska gets the ball back, and they're actually a little bit productive. They hold the ball for 5 minutes and go 8 plays for 30 yards, but then UCLA once again shuts them down on a fourth down play. Dylan Raiola is not able to convert, and then UCLA gets the ball back, and UCLA a few plays later will score their final points and pretty much win the game with this drive as they hit, Ethan Garbers hits Quasi Gilmer with a huge play-action pass wide open down the field to score a big touchdown. Now they're up 27-7, and then now they end up holding on for the rest of the game. But that drive, it was only 3 plays, right? Starts with a disaster. Garbers gets sacked, but then TJ Harden comes through with a huge run, 18 yards, probably the best run that he's had in the last couple of games, and certainly his best run of the game. And that run, at first, it ends up being third and short because the Nebraska or the referees do not mark it well. And like on TV, it was like obvious it was a first down, but then they mark it short, and then Foster takes the timeout, which was a good savvy move by him. And then he challenges it basically, and they end up looking on the TV, overturning it. Now all of a sudden they have a 1st and 10. You get the timeout back, and immediately they call a play action pass, which was a great call, right? On 1st and 10, you can take a shot, and 48 yards to Quasi Gilmer. Great play by him. I still, every time he makes a play, I laugh and giggle because I got a picture with my son Malcolm and him this year at the spring showcase thing. So I'm certainly invested in Quasi. He's one of my magic men as well, for sure.
The magic man.
So Anywho, now the Bruins are up 27-7, and now they just have to kind of hold on. And hold on they did, because Nebraska bounces back with a big 7-play, 75-yard drive. But once again, what happens on that drive? Is there a personal foul on there at some point that really cost the Bruins big time? Yeah, there's an unsportsmanlike conduct on Alekaho. I didn't see this one on TV, so you guys will have to tell me whether or not it was a good call or not. But it takes a 2nd 11 from midfield to 1st and 10 at UCLA's 38, and then Rayola makes a couple plays, 30-yard pass to Barney. Ja'Cory Barney was big for the Cornhuskers in this game. Nobody can take that away from him. But they end up scoring, and quickly, as quickly as UCLA had pushed out that big lead, 27-7, Nebraska gets back within shouting distance, right? And then UCLA. Now, for the rest of the game, they're not going to have any offense. 3 more punts and 2 3-and-outs. The last drive they sustained is this next drive, which takes them to about 2 minutes left in the third quarter. And after that, there's no Bruin offense for the rest of the game. So I don't know, take that for what you will. But this is the drive in which the Bruins get to midfield, and then Deshaun Foster ends up with a 3rd and 9 at the Nebraska 42 and ends up taking the penalty to punt the ball. And look, we made a big point last week about Schiano taking a penalty to punt the ball, and then UCLA gets the ball and ends up scoring on it, I want to say, and going for it deep in their own territory on the 4th and 1. Everybody was celebrating Deshaun Foster for making that decision, especially based on how he made the decision in the Minnesota game, yada, yada, yada. But I'm sorry, I think that this was absolutely the right call in this part of the game, and they almost were able to pin Nebraska deep if my magic man I just mentioned,
the magic man,
would have made another spectacular play and been able to down that punt inside the 5, then that would have put Nebraska in a real rough situation. But just in a vacuum, right? Normally you don't like to see the surrender punts, I guess. I don't think this qualifies as one of those. So if anybody's calling it that, I don't think a 4th and 9, even at midfield, is something that is like an automatic go for it. And I might be giving a straw man argument because I don't know if anybody's actually saying that, because it's not like I listen to anybody before recording this. But I just imagine the Twitter crowd getting a little loose with it whenever you have the take the delay to give you more room to punt is kind of a much reviled cliche in college football. But sometimes it's the right thing to do. And I think in this case, it absolutely was the right thing to do. And it almost worked out, absolutely, in spades for the Bruins. It didn't quite. It still gave Nebraska the ball with plenty of room to operate at the 20. It just didn't quite work out, but that could have worked out much better for the Bruins. So once again, it's a conservative move, but in this situation, given the game situation, I think it's the right call, or at least not an indefensible call by any stretch of the imagination, right? I think this is definitely one where, that was the right thing to do. And in hindsight, Nebraska gets the ball back, they drive the field, and the Bruins are able to stop them on downs. Once again, Bruin defense coming up big. That's another part of the equation too, right? Your defense has been playing really, really well the entire game and only giving up points when they've done something boneheaded and stupid like doing a personal foul. And they end up stopping Nebraska on this drive. Nebraska gets it. They drive 12 plays to end up turning it over on downs on a 6-minute drive, spanning the rest of the third quarter. And with about 11 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter, Royal is sacked by Schlesinger. Great play, lost to 10 yards, and the Bruin defense comes through. So, at the end, justifying the decision to punt the ball. The Bruins get the ball with 11 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter at that point. And if they're able to sustain their drive, this game becomes much less stressful, but they're not, right? They go 3 and out. They start with a penalty and end up having to punt the ball. And that's when Nebraska starts to make it a little bit nervous, because then they get the ball back and they have another touchdown drive. But it's not a touchdown drive without incident, right? How many plays inside the Bruin 5-yard line did we have, or inside the 10-yard line? Look at the drive chart on that, and it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a 13-play drive. It starts at the Nebraska 47 because Richter decided to have his worst punt. He's been doing great all year, but that was not the best for them. Nebraska gets the ball pretty much at midfield, and they, a few plays later, they get it all the way inside the Bruin 10-yard line. First and goal at the UCLA 9. Rayola's incomplete. They call holding on KJ Wallace, which whatever. I guess it was a call, but that is automatic first down inside the 10 again. And then Nebraska runs a bunch of plays. UCLA stiffens up. They have them 4th and goal, and they're making the stop. And then Havili Kavusi gets flagged for what I think is an absolute bullshit play, because I don't think he pulled a guy off the pile at all. They're just in the pile. I think that was, like I said, we talked about being polite in Nebraska, but I think this was over the top, a really bad call that allows Nebraska to make this a one-score game and really make it uncomfortable for the Bruins going down the stretch there. But it is a Pyrrhic victory for Nebraska because in that sequence, when they're inside the 10-yard line, Dylan Raiola ends up getting just crushed on a run. He was trying to make a valiant play, but he gets crushed by two Bruins and gets knocked out of the game. And there's a real sad moment later in the game, a few minutes later, where he starts to come into the game and he kind of like goes down to his knees. And we hope that he is okay. But for the Bruins, that was absolutely what you wanted and needed to do. You knocked their quarterback out of the game, and it ends up being kind of definitive. So instead of having Nebraska's offense with Dylan Raiola and the ability to tie the game going down the stretch in that final drive, it is a backup quarterback, and he ends up throwing an interception, and that's pretty much the ball game. The Bruins had a 3-and-out drive before that. If they could have converted a 3rd and 1, this would have been a lot less interesting probably, but they weren't able to. And so, Richter punts, and then the Bruin defense made it a little bit interesting there, but ended up getting the interception to seal the game, and all is right in the world. Go Bruins, and they win the game.
Go Bruins!
UCLA! UCLA! Fight, fight, fight!
I'm happy that UCLA won.
So we talked about how much of a struggle it was for Nebraska and how well the UCLA defense played in the first half, and that certainly was the case. But, oh my gosh, Nebraska definitely turned it around in the second half. Look at the second half stats, and it's not quite as lopsided as it was for the Bruins in the first half in the favor of Nebraska, but it's pretty lopsided. Nebraska outgains the Bruins in the second half, 251 to 110. Nebraska ends up running 52 plays to the Bruins 17. They end up having a 21-minute time possession advantage to the Bruins 8.5 minute, which kind of evens it all out for the game, which is totally crazy to me. I don't know. The Bruins end up getting outpossessed by Nebraska this game, which is kind of just bonkers to me considering how the game started and how the game felt through most of it. And this is definitely one where the statistics are deceiving as hell. Of course, it's great the Bruins end up holding Nebraska to 20 points, but I don't think that this defensive performance was a 20-point performance by them. This is like a 10 to 13-point performance by them, if that makes any sense at all, right? And they still held Nebraska to 322 total yards, right? But in the second half, they did get Nebraska did get some things going. And in the off week, I dug into what the Bruins statistics were, and I was kind of tweeting a few things out about that. Alarming statistics for the Bruin defense. A 5-alarm fire statistic for the Bruin defense was that they were worst in the country on third down percentage, getting their opponents off the field on third down, 55%. Now, if you looked at this game and you said, was third down a problem for the Bruins? You say, well, absolutely not. They dominated the Nebraska on third down. In fact, after the first quarter, after the first half, they were 1 for 5 on third downs. Well, Nebraska finishes the game. This is unbelievable to me. Nebraska finishes the game 9 for 17 on third down, over 50%. That's not going to help the Bruins last in the country third down percentage at all. But if you told me the Bruin defense is going to play like this every game, I'd say they'd have a great chance to win. But that's one of those ones where it's a weird anomaly, and it is what it is. But Nebraska going 8 for 12 on third downs in the second half was kind of crazy and just doesn't fit what the game was, and I guess that's probably the main reason why the Bruins end up winning this game by 7 points instead of 14 to 17 points, which is what the game felt like to me watching it. That's how much the Bruins dominated the game. So just kind of keep that in mind. This is a team that even when they play really good, like in this game, they're probably not going to be winning games in blowouts because there are things that happen that kind of catch up with them throughout the course of the game, whether it's so in this game, it was really the personal fouls was the only black mark on the defense, I think. But it seems like there's going to be something. But just the fact that the defensive stats evened out so much in this game, it was just weird, and that's kind of also part of what happens when you're on the road as well, playing in these games. It's hard to win on the road. College football games are long affairs, right? There's so many things that happen. Look at how many possessions they had back and forth throughout this game, even though a lot of it was just futility. But just listen to the Nebraska drive chart and tell me that this wasn't a hugely successful game for this Bruin defense. They go punt, touchdown, punt, end of half, interception for a touchdown, pick six, downs, touchdown, downs, touchdown, interception. I mean, yeah. I think if you're going to get that type of performance out of your defense, you're going to be, doing pretty well in most games. And you add in, they were able to generate quite a bit of pressure. I think they got 4 sacks this game. They got 2 turnovers. I mean, this was a very good performance by the Bruin defense, and those guys should be celebrated absolutely. And we will when we get to the baller segment. On the Bruin offense, on the Bruin offensive side, right? I mean, they came out and they, like I said it earlier. They were playing this efficient style. They can't run the ball still, but they're making up for it by, taking advantage of the different short passes. I would still like to see them pushing a little bit more to the sidelines behind the line of scrimmage, but, that might have been limited this game because, some of their wide receivers didn't seem more fully healthy or got hit hard and got knocked out of the game. But if everybody's healthy, I would like to see them trying to get the ball into J. Mike's hands, give him some room to run. Same with Titus. This staff does seem to be determined to let Quasi Gilmore make some plays, and he is making the plays. So, good on that dude. And you wonder if, the Bruins do have a lot of wide receivers that deserve some coverage, right? So maybe Quasi's the guy that is getting the least of that coverage, and they're taking advantage of that. Or if they're just choosing to feature him at, over the other guys, I can't really tell you, but it's worked the last couple games, and we're glad to see these big performances. All right, well, let's get to the ballers of the game, and then let's talk about what's going up for the Bruins the rest of the season, and then we'll get out of here.
Didn't you say in your resume that you did 4 years at UCLA?
Yes. Technically, if you consider Bel Air an extension of the campus, which everybody does.
So let's celebrate the ballers in this game. There was a lot of them. I got a nice long list, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody too, so if I do, feel free to correct me. We're going to start first with the guy who I'm always going to start first with as long as he has a good game, and that is the guy who was much maligned early in the year. His name is Ethan. Just call him E.
My name is Ethan.
Just call me E.
220 yards, which is not a gaudy statistic, but very effective. I think it was over like 8.5 yards per attempt or something like that. 2 huge TDs, a nice little screen pass to Berger on a trick little play that I didn't even mention. We'll get to that in a minute. We get to Tasty Burgers. But also a big run down the field for a second consecutive time. And just a great, showing some great leadership out there. I'm really happy to see Ethan Garber's doing well. And I hope he continues this play for the rest of the season, makes this his season as a Bruin. And we can remember him as a good Bruin, even if the record isn't what everybody wanted or whatever. But this will be a year where we can look back and say, man, that guy really balled out for the Bruins. And I couldn't be more happy for that guy. So he is just a baller, man. Just a baller.
Straight baller.
Also, Quasi Gilmore, as I said, I have a picture of him with my son, so I'm always going to be invested with him. He is absolutely one of my magic men.
The magic man.
We need to figure out some sort of draw for him, but he is absolutely just a baller with that big play he made on the play action catch, just waltzes into the end zone.
He's just a baller, man.
And that put the Bruins ahead for good. That wasn't the only play that put the Bruins ahead for good. Obviously, they were playing with the lead the entire game, but that was the one that sealed it. So great job from that young man. Good job, Quasi. Also, Jalen Berger, it's a huge touchdown for the Bruins, and we are very appreciative of it. It was a really cool play design as well. They didn't, like I said, I wish they would have had some more bubble screens in this game, but they didn't have any, but that's fine, whatever. But they did a cool little, fake play action play where Berger ends up taking the play action, then end up getting the screen pass off of it. Fun play design, right? A lot of misdirection. And that was a Tasty Burger touchdown.
This is a Tasty Burger.
And he is absolutely a baller. So good job from Jalen Berger.
Just a baller, man.
Continuing with the offense, Maliki Matavao, I'm hoping he's not too hurt in this game, but he was kind of a security blanket for Ethan Garbers for a lot of this game as usual. And so he gets a shot, a baller shot from me. I think he had like 50 yards and like 4 receptions, but still very timely.
He's just a baller, man.
TJ Harden my heart. He has the run of the game, I think, that along with Garber's 50-yard scamper, but it really did set up the Quasi Gilmore touchdown, and so he must be celebrated for that. The gaudy stats are not there for these running backs this year, and they've all had like little moments, Keegan Jones included, but this game, Harden had a really great moment. And so we'll give him a straight baller.
Straight baller.
For making that play and allowing them to take the shot on first down after he gets that first down himself. So great job. And then, the last couple I'm going to give, as a group, the offensive line, less pressure for Garbers. They, held up pretty much the whole game, and those guys played like ballers today.
Straight baller.
And then last but not least, this one is for, Eric Bieniemy. I can't believe I'm saying it, but for 3 or 4 games in a row, they're actually looking like an actual college offense, which is just making me so happy. I just can't believe it. I can't contain myself. Eric Bieniemy twice in 2 weeks has scored 20 points with his offense. It's just amazing, right? And they got 7 from the pick six, but I mean, we'll take it. Obviously, would we prefer 27, 32? Oh my God, 35 points. I can't imagine that again this season. Maybe, who knows? But I mean, this would end up being a kind of a mid-tier performance, I think, offensively for the Bruin offense, I would hope, except for the fact that it's the second highest point total they've had all season. So just a baller, for
He's just a baller, man.
Bieniemy the last couple of games, hopefully figuring out something that allows the Bruins to be successful in the rest of the slate. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. Now, moving over to the defense, which definitely gets a lot of the baller treatment this game. First and foremost, the Bruins' leading tackler, he is an absolute stud. Comes out of nowhere, Carl Schlesinger, 13 tackles and a sack on a fourth down, 4th and goal. That is just an absolute huge play. One of the game-winning plays. Just absolutely.
Just a baller, man.
He's just a baller, man.
Straight baller.
All the ballers for Carson Schlesinger. Came Madrano again, that huge pick
He's
six.
just a baller, man.
Just a baller, man.
Out there making plays and made, another play that, the Bruins do not win this game if he doesn't get that pick six, possibly. Certainly puts the pressure on Nebraska. So absolutely huge. Oladejo, he's, he seems like he's everywhere the last few games, and he's getting some constant pressure.
Straight baller.
And that's great. And unfortunately, he does his little boneheaded play. It's okay. Every once in a while, they forget about Dre.
They forgot about Dre.
They did a couple times this game. Don't forget about Dre.
They forgot about Dre.
It's right there on the back of Deshaun Foster's freaking jacket.
They forgot about Dre.
Don't do the bad personal fouls or whatever, but it cost the team. But otherwise, other than that, Oladejo is playing like a baller.
Straight baller.
Also, along with that, Jay Toya, straight baller.
Just a baller, man.
Brian Addison, more big hits in this game. And then on that, Jalen Moore, which we'll get to right now, that big interception they had to end the game. But he's the one who popped that ball up. And then an amazing play. So Brian Addison and Jalen Moore, both ballers.
He's just a baller, man.
To seal the game for the Bruins. So there's a bunch of game-sealing plays for the Bruins, weren't there? I'm calling it out. But gosh, a great performance by the defense. We are very happy with that. And, and even though the statistical anomalies persist, if the Bruin defense plays like this, they certainly pass the eye test for me, and they are not the ones that I'm casting any ire towards as far as how this team goes. And, the offense, much more functional. It's actually a functional offense. So now we are apparently cooking with propane or gas or whatever expression you like to use. So that is fan-freaking-tastic.
And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight.
Jake Merrifield made a lot of outstanding points.
Is UCLA good at football?
Yes.
What?
I don't know if we can really go good quite yet, but certainly much better than it looked early in the season. So we should be happy with that. And looking ahead to later in the season, things are just looking a little bit more rosy, I would have to say. So, looking at the schedule going ahead, you got 4 games left. You have Iowa at Washington, hosting SC, hosting Fresno State. 3 home games. Hopefully, these are 3 home games that will make us a lot more happy than the previous home games have this season against the Bruins. That would be the Minnesota loss and the Oregon loss. This is where it evens out as far as the Bruins' home road schedule. Oh, yeah. The Indiana loss, which I choose to forget. That thing's like Voldemort to me, right? So far, the Bruins are 0-3 at the Rose Bowl. They have 3 games left at the Rose Bowl. What could their record be? I don't know. Iowa is going to be a tough test for them. It's going to be a game, another national TV game on Fox after they had that string against the big, juggernaut opponents that they had earlier in the season. And as of right now, I know Mike's going to give us a big update on the winning percentages that the Bruins have going forward in the season. But as of right now, I don't know what it was last week, but right now the Bruins have a 32% chance of victory in that game, according to ESPN Win Predictor. We'll see what the spread is in that game. But eyeballing the Hawkeyes, this isn't a game. I don't think the Hawkeyes are that much better than the last 3 teams the Bruins have faced, honestly. I just really don't. You're going to have a hard time convincing me of that. Might they be better? Sure. But a whole lot better than Minnesota Rutgers and Nebraska? I don't know. And now you get to host them at the Rose Bowl. I'm sure there's going to be a big contingent of fans for Iowa there, make the big trip. But hopefully the Bruins can come out and give them a game and play them well. And who knows, the way the Bruins defense is playing, I give them a good chance to play really well against the Iowa offense. And then it's just, can the Bruins offense score any points? Right, that's what that key is going to be. Then they got to travel up to the Sound and play Washington in Husky Stadium. Is it Husky Stadium? I think it's Husky Stadium. Anyways, that's going to be a tough game. But Washington, as we saw last night against SC, they are prone to kind of shooting themselves in the foot and then making tremendous plays. But that's a game I think you have to think would be, like I said, just a bunch of coin flip games going down the line. The SC game, we're hosting it. I think you have to feel good about the Bruins' chances in that game just because those games are generally pretty close when the teams are relatively even. And right now it looks like those teams are relatively even though the Bruins are looking down at the Trojans in the standings, which is very nice. The Bruins, of course, being 2-4 in the conference, and SC being 2-5. So that could be definitively for the bottom of the conference. Who knows? Or as the Bruins start moving up, the Bruins tied for 11th in the Big Ten Conference. Who would have thunk it after just a few weeks ago being mired in last place with no wins? Now that's all Purdue, and then the Fresno State game. So they got 4 games left if they want to. And I know Mike is going to tease me about not wanting to talk about a bowl game. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more on Tuesday. But the Bruins want to make a bowl game. You'd have to say that, if they're playing like they played the last few weeks, they're going to be, heavy favorites against Fresno State. So we can we just chalk up a win like this is a 4-win season as the floor? I think we can honestly say that now. I think you can say that 4 is the floor for the Bruins in 2024. Well, that's a lot of 4s. But that's where we're at. That's the floor. And then what's the ceiling then, right? Could they win the other games on their schedule? I think you'd have to say, yeah, absolutely they can, right? The ceiling now has been raised again, and the ceiling for this team, you have to say it's 7. Is that likely? No, absolutely not. I would not pick them to win 7 games. But they're going to be in 4 games that are relative coin flips, based on how they are playing. And that's something at least that you could say, well, geez, if they finish the season super strong, that would be a whole hell of a lot of momentum. And you'd have to think that they could get some steam moving behind the program if they finish that well. I think if they got to a bowl game, I think you can make the same argument that would just be a tremendous turnaround compared to where they were with the 5-game losing streak against the parade of horribles that are Indiana, LSU, Oregon, Penn State, and then muffing that Minnesota game. I think you'd also say that, we've talked about where they are versus expectation. And before the season, you'd have to say that you thought they were going to beat Indiana. But then once you saw Indiana play, there's no way in hell anyone would pick the Bruins to beat Indiana this year, in this particular year, given what they have over there. So what expectation would be from the season is they lost the Minnesota game that they probably should have won. But now they won this Nebraska game that most people would say they probably should have lost. So they're they're at par now, right? Given what we know about this season, you'd have to say, number one, the Bruins struggled mightily and were absolutely dreadful, almost beyond redemption, you would think, early in the season, what we were looking at in the Indiana game, the Oregon game, all that stuff. However, they have recovered nicely. And now you'd have to, I don't think you can make any other argument other than they're about at what the reasonable expectation would be. And that's okay. Right? And that's good. So that's something to be kind of excited about. And they have the opportunity to really make this season a nice story for them. And I hope that these players and these coaches do that because it would be fun to talk about. So I am rooting for that. So, hey, a higher floor and a higher ceiling for the Bruins than we thought would have been possible just a couple weeks ago. And that's because they go on the road, right? On the road in the Big Ten across the country, beat Rutgers, beat Nebraska, and all of a sudden they are in much better shape than what we thought. So that's great. So with that being said, let's get to all of your calls.
Hi, guys. This is Nancy, a little hoarse from yelling, but I'm here in Lincoln, and I watched an amazing game. And I can tell you, the Nebraska folks thought they had a little life in the fourth quarter, but our defense to shut them down repeatedly except the one touchdown. But the other times, amazing. Deshaun needs to work a little bit on discipline in regards to unsportsmanlike behavior. No excuse for that, and it probably cost us a touchdown. And it would have made my life a little less stressful towards the end. But on the whole, I am so excited, so positive, and I can't wait for Iowa because I know we can win. So my best to all of you, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm so excited that you got to go to that game. That's so cool. I hope your travel went very well. That's a game I haven't gotten. The Bruins have played Nebraska so many times in the last decade, and I haven't been to that game yet. So I will probably try to make that trip the next time they end up on the Bruins Big Ten slate. But that is so great. I'm so glad to hear that you got to get out there and watch that. And yeah, I mean, we already talked about it, but the Bruins, guys, if they didn't forget about Dre, this would have been a 20-point win, for goodness sakes. But that's terrific. Glad you got to get out there, Nancy, and I hope you travel safely back. Who do we have next?
Hey, this is Des from Santa Clarita. And I just want to say this is the team I envision going 10-2. The defense was stout outside of giving up stupid penalties. This game should have been way, the defense should have gave up way less points than what it did. Offense was humming. They did a really great job. And, this is just a sign of things to come. The recruiting is on pace. 2025 looks like they got now 18 kids. And I'm pretty sure they're going to dip into the transfer portal once that opens up. Things are looking good for next season. This season, hopefully we can make a poor man's bowl game. And if so, hopefully we can win that too. Sorry I didn't call the last 2 weeks. There were kids' birthday parties at posh places and, other spaces. So outside of that, go Bruins.
Des, absolutely no apology necessary. That was awesome, and it's good to have you back on the calling show. And yeah, dude, I know you were. We said I had to allude to you were talking about them winning 10 games, but this is a little bit of what we all thought they would. None of us thought they would be as bad as they looked, right? This is what it was supposed to look like, and I'm glad they got it figured out. And at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like, other than the Minnesota game, it has cost them really anything win-wise. It just was something that completely deflated the fan base, and then now you have to kind of breathe some life into it, like one of those little things you blow wind on the fire. What are those things called? They look like an accordion thing. I can't remember. My words are eluding me right now. But anyway, Des, I think this is the type of games that we can watch and we say, yeah, man, they actually have something here, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch a Bruin football game, even if it's a little stressful, a little overly stressful at points, because they're all kind of learning where they're going. You got students on the field running around. They don't know nothing. And then you got Sean Foster learning on the job. He's learning. And you got Eric Bieniemy trying to adjust to being back in the college atmosphere. And, it looks like he's finally got something figured out, hopefully. But we'll see. So, Des, thanks for calling. And, yeah, I agree with you, man. This is much better than it was. All right. Who is next?
Hi, What's Bruin Show? This is Carrie. I am very excited that we won at Nebraska. Both the offense and defense played really, really well. There was penalties, and that can be worked on. The other thing is, I'm not sure how much improvement I'm seeing in these late game decisions, like fourth downs. I'm not sure if there's any consideration of the calculated risk of certain types of actions in late games. I would be more than happy to prepare some no cards. And it's just something that I think needs to be memorized. So in those late game decisions, the coaching staff knows at least what the best option is from a risk standpoint. And I think if they can improve on the penalties and the game decisions, they have a good opportunity to win 3 out of the next 4 games. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's a great day to be alive and be a Bruin. Hope you are doing well. Go Bruins.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you very much for the call. I always love to hear your voice. And yeah, dude, I couldn't agree with you more. I talked about it earlier, and I kind of feel like Deshaun Foster's still trying to figure out his style and try to decide exactly where he leans. But I think it's obvious that he leans towards very conservative, risk-averse sort of strategies. But I totally agree with you. Like, get him his note cards, right? They make Big Ten money now. They should be able to just to pay a guy that stands there going, okay, in this situation, this is what the odds say, and then look at the overall game circumstance. How is your team playing? And then make the decision from there. I don't think they should be 1,000% in the this is what the statistics say camp. I think there should be a little bit of room there for manager feel, for coach feel. He's the one who's sitting there looking at the game, looking at his players, looking at his players' eyes. I think, it's kind of a side note here. Think about all the complaints about Dave Roberts, and how the Dodgers manage their late game situations in these high stress playoff situations. And it seems like he was getting hit so hard for just playing by the book all the time, because that's what the management was telling him to do. And now it seems more like that is absolutely the underlying backbone of what they do. They look at what the statistics say they should do, and then they make their decision from there. But it's not set in stone. They still have the ability to adjust if that's what they're feeling they need to do. And that's, I think, what any kind of successful leader or successful coach kind of needs to understand. What do the odds tell me? And then what do I want to do based on the totality of the circumstances? So absolutely right, Carrie. I couldn't agree with you any more about that. But I don't think it's so cut and dry. There are a lot of, Twitter experts out there who probably have never coached or led anyone in their life, and they're so sure that their call is the right call. And this is not just football. This is not, this is kind of sports in general. That's part of what sports is the second guessing, and like, you absolutely know better than what they know. But, so much of this is what is going on in the actual moment with your players, and how are you leading them, and the decisions you make, and how that will affect them down the line as well, and credibility and all that stuff. So anywho, great call, Carrie. And let's get that part nailed down. And I think that, it's only going to make them better. Okay. I have one other call, but it was from the bye week, and it was from Diego. And he starts out by saying some very nice things about Mike and Mike, the folks from Jersey. And I will try to, cut that down and play it in the next, on the Tuesday show. So, and Diego, if you have anything else to say, please call in. We always love to hear from Darth Diego. But that's why I didn't make the show, because last Tuesday I totally forgot. So my apologies to you, my friend. But anywho, I think that's going to wrap up this postgame. Please, if you enjoy listening to the postgame after the show, please send it to any of your Bruin friends, because we'd like to have as many people listening to it as possible. I think it's the best postgame that is out there, considering your other options. But hey, that's up for you to decide. But I like doing it. I'm going to continue to do it as long as the Bruins are playing football in the Big Ten or the Pac-12 or wherever they're going to play. But we'll be back on Tuesday with another show. Mike will be joining me, presumably, and we'll talk about the fallout from this game, as well as any other calls that come in. And please subscribe on the Twitter and the Instagram and the YouTube. That would really help us out if you subscribe on those. And hey, let's enjoy this wonderful Bruin victory on a nice Sunday. Sorry it's coming to you a little bit late. I can't believe that I was beat to the punch by the Bruin Bible. That just absolutely disgusts me. Damn you, Will Decker. But, like I said, I had a family day yesterday, and I wanted to make sure I gave you more than 8 minutes of postcast in it for this game. So we'll talk to you Tuesday. If you have any calls, call the hotline, 805-399-4WPS. The Bruins get a huge win over Nebraska at Nebraska, 27-20. Nancy had a good trip. All you guys are feeling good in Bruin land. And until we talk to you Tuesday, go Bruins.
Good evening.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
That was the What's Bruin Show.
Try us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
It's got to be in or out, Mom. In or out. Well, I need the door closed.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Dude, brah, we play some ball on the West Coast.
The final word is boob.